Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Now, today we're going to continue on with our basic tutorial for Gary Grigsby's War in the East. This is episode number 10, and this is actually the second part of covering production, supply, and logistics. Now, in the first part, we talked mainly about production, the production screen up here, the permanent sources of production, factories, whether they be Axis or Soviet. We really delved into that. Now, you cannot necessarily control production that much. It's generally controlled by the AI. It's kind of preset. Now it is important what the Soviets are doing and what you can go capture so that they cannot, uh, produce more. But as the Axis player, really production, the only thing you could do is give it some general settings. You can also look at your pool and how many things are being built and decide how much you want to be reinforced or refitted. Um, but you don't really necessarily control production. Supply and logistics you do control to a great extent, or at least you control the logistics side of getting supplies to your units. And at the end of last episode, we talked about these special railroad units. And I just backed off into the grand scenario because I wanted to kind of show you the big picture. Now, last time I showed you on the commander's report that you have four of these special railroad units. This happens to be FBD4. You also have FBD3, 2, and 1. FBD4 is the only one attached to Army Group North. It again is right up here in the north. Let's get up here and take a better look at it. It's not that one, folks. Did I move it? I probably moved it. No, I didn't. There it is. Um, there is FBD4. Now, traditionally, the way most people play this game, FBD4 is going to start on this rail line, uh, and it will make its way to Peskov. So you'll be moving up the rail lines to Peskov, whatever you think the fastest route to, whoa, that's a little too far, to get to Peskov is. And then once you're to Peskov, you will then follow the route all the way up to Leningrad because usually your troops are going to be encircling Leningrad here, at least on the bottom or the southern portion of Leningrad. And you're going to try to get this repaired rail as close to your headquarters units and your divisions as you can. Now, why is that? Because the last or closest repaired railroad line is what the game calls a railhead. And that is as far as you can take supply, the big general supply. So supply, fuel, and ammunition, that's as far as you can take it by rail, which is very important as the Axis player because you only have a limited vehicle pool to then take it from the railhead to your units or to your headquarters units or individual divisions. And we'll get into how all of that works. But the big basic point is you need to repair this Russian rail, which is on, or Soviet rail, which is on a different gauge than German and Central European rail. And because of that, you have special railroad units that will go in, change over the railway to be able to hold German cargo and or German cargo, what do you call it? Rail cars, I guess you would call it, and move that supply, fuel, and ammunition as far north as you can here when we're talking about this unit. Okay, I will also tell you that as the game starts, you'll get moving out here, and then all of a sudden, you'll see a million of these little units that have shovels, just like this one, that will be stretched out all over here. What those are special construction units that are controlled by generally Army, your Army group or Army headquarters. And we've seen those before, right? So let's go to this Army headquarters. Let's right click. You see these construction battalions. Now, some are road construction, but there are also just generalized construction battalions. They will be repairing the secondary rail all through this network, okay? And you don't really have control over that. That will be done because those construction units are in your either Army or Army Group headquarters generally, and they will be repairing all the secondary rail where you're not going. With this specialized railroad unit, you control this, and you're going to pick one route, the fastest route. Now, again, traditionally, I think most people go this route where they'll go here and then straight up here to Riga. And then once they get to Riga, they come, you can either go north here and over to Peskov. You could also swoop around here and to Peskov. And then once you're at Peskov, you will come straight up here and probably stop about right here. You do not want your specialized railroad unit to get attacked by the Russians. That would be disaster. As I said, you only have 4 of these, and they're arguably the most important unit in the game because you have got to get this rail network taking as much of your supply, ammunition, and fuel as you can so that you're not using as many vehicles to then transport it from wherever the railhead is to your headquarters and units. So you've got to get this sucker moving and you got to get it moving fast. Otherwise, you're going to completely deplete your vehicle pool. Okay? And so, big overall picture, you've got this one, which is FBD4. That one's always going to take that northern route. The next one is right here. FBD2 is attached to Army Group Center, and they will always be attached to the Army groups. And that one is right up here, right here. And traditionally, this one goes, it will wait until the divisions blow the Soviet Union divisions out. And when you start the game, if you haven't played the game before, on turn 1, you get a huge bonus as the Axis, and you have just better troops. You take them by surprise. You will blow most of these Soviet units way back. They'll rout and they'll go fly, what I call flying or routing out. They'll go way, get knocked way out of here. And when that happens, then you're going to take this railroad unit and you're going to start right here in this hex and you're going to repair this hex, then this one, and so on and so forth as you go. Now, as you're right here, you're above the Baltic Rail Zone, so it will only cost 1 point, 1 movement point to repair each hex. As you get below the Baltic Rail Zone or to the east of it here, as you see, it goes here, and then once it gets past Vilnius, it cuts north. Once you get past that, it takes 3 points to repair each railroad hex. But traditionally, this one will come here. It will go to Kaunas, all right? Then I usually repair both of these, both hexes, well, all 3 to here. And then it starts heading to Vilnius. And then out of Vilnius, it will come down to Minsk. And once it gets to Minsk, it will turn east again and start heading towards Smolensk. All right. And you're just going to keep this thing going. Once it gets to Smolensk, generally you would go up to Vyazma to here. And this is about as far as you take it. Unless you're able to encircle Moscow, really, you just don't want to take the risk of getting it down, in here where a quick counterattack can put it at risk. So FBD2, traditionally Kaunas, Vilnius, Minsk, Smolensk, Vyazma. That is pretty much how everybody moves that one. But you have a second one that is attached to Army Group Center. Now you have a decision to make. Some people will wait until Brest-Litovsk gets absolutely, run over because you're going to be moving these panzers, and after turn 1, you're going to expect to have your panzers all the way out here by Minsk. That's how fast you move in 1 week. That would be a natural expectation of where you should be if you have a chance of taking Moscow. If you don't get there, if you're, stuck back here somewhere, you're never getting to Moscow in time. Time is your enemy, really, as opposed to the Soviet troops. You should bottle all of these Soviet troops up in turn one and two. And so you've got this one here. It is FBD 3. So some people will take it from Brest, and then you come up here to this big centralized railway that kind of runs for a very long way straight, and then they will go south to Gomel, and then they'll kind of decide, are we going to go up to Bryansk? You could even meet up here, uh, there, or you can go down to Gomel and this way. I do not go that route, and I'll tell you why, is because it's a little too close to the other one. Um, and that route, through here gets you to Smolensk. Well, if you follow the route I'm talking about here, you end up not too far away from Smolensk. Even if you take the southern one, the distances here, once you get out here, yes, this could be very helpful. But when you're up here, you're just not that far away from the other specialized rail unit. And you'll have these other construction units out here fixing all the ones back here. You really, I don't think, need it in the center as much. I think that you should use it down south, okay? But you already have one down south, and it is this one. This is FBD1. And the way I do these is I move FBD3 down here and take what is considered the northern route in the south, okay? So you can take it through here and down to Rovna, down to Zhytomyr, and to Kiev. And that's the key, is getting that one to Kiev. But then you have this other one, as I said, FBD1. But see, if we, oh shoot, sorry. All of a sudden I got War in the Pacific up there. If you look at the South and we really look at the big overall picture, so let's go back up here. All right. Hey, this will give me a chance to use arrows. We've got the one that's going to be heading to Leningrad. Okay, great. Peskov's actually there, close enough. We've got the one that's going to be heading to Smolensk. All right, and then on to Moscow. Great. Now, this one, if you moved it, would be coming right here, right? And now eventually it may cut south, or you may feel like you need it up in here. But what I like to do is take that one and move it instead to Kiev and then out here into the Russian plain. All right. And this keeps them a little equidistant because if you really look at it, the South has a lot more territory that's kind of wide open. So I would take this one, I move it down this way. All right. You can even rail it down and have it go from Odessa to Rostov. And this way, you've kind of got them all equidistant in my mind. And so, railing this one down here and getting it here, or you can just build from here so you're keeping the railhead close as your units are fanning out from here, I think is the much better option. And so, big overview, this is how I move my specialized rail units. They're going to be creating what is called my railhead. And why is the railhead important? Well, let's get back down and actually get out of here and go back to our save scenario that we had here called railroad, and open that up because this is going to allow us to go down to the level of the individual unit and look at how this is affected. Now, there are two different ways a division or a broken up division that's in regiments can be supplied. and fueled and ammunitioned. So the overall big supply. There are two ways, either through its headquarters, okay, or directly from the railhead. All right. But that is less efficient. If it is getting supply itself, what you really want is for this division and this division, every division, to be getting supplied from its core headquarters. So let's hit on Shift Z. Oh, this is weird. Now in this scenario, that acts differently. It won't let me see which one is its actual headquarters. Well, that's kind of weird. Okay, well, whatever. I can still see it by color, obviously. There we go. So the 11th Infantry Division. All right, let's right click on that. We'll look. Now, when we're looking down here at supply, we'll see supply and need. All right, 128 to 128. That's good. That is, now it's showing it at 99%. That's just kind of a rounding thing, right? Fuel need 20 and 20. Okay. Now that's actually rounding really down to 98%. Ammo and need 687 to 514. So we're looking very well supplied, fueled, and ammoed here. That's great. Now, if there is excess in the division, it will be sending it back to its headquarters, its core headquarters, which has supply and fuel dumps, which are storage. Okay, and so you will see this gravitate down to 100% if you have excess. That is, if it's over 125% generally, that's when it tries to send it back. If it's only at 122%, it kind of figures it's going to use some of that in the next turn, so it won't send that back. Um, all right, so great, fantastic. We are well supplied. All right. Then you say in supply 2MP. And what does this mean? Well, this really gets to the crux of the matter. And let's click on supply details. Now, this just recaps for us for the 11th Infantry Division that its supplies are 128, 99%, same info that we saw before, how many vehicles this unit has in the unit itself, okay, which is important for getting supply and getting supply distributed in the unit. Great. So it needs 255. That's required. And we have 255. You'll see the game try to match that up and move supply trucks or, 247 of these supply. I assume the 8 are, lieutenants running around in trucks. Uh, but you get the idea. 255, that's great. If it has excess, the game will try to even that out. All right. Now, what is this? Now, these are the most important numbers here. This is really what you have to pay attention to. It says range to rail 1, MP to rail 2, range to headquarters 2, and MP to headquarters 2. What does this all mean? Okay. Well, the top two numbers are how far away this individual unit is from the railhead. It is 1 hex away from the railhead. That is 2 movement points. All right. And both of these things matter. These things are an and, not an or. You have to be within range for the number of hexes and also the number of movement points. Now, why is that? Well, if you're going over a river, it costs a lot more movement points. It's also harder to move supply over a river. And so the game makes you say, oh, well, you may be in the hex right next to the railhead, but the railhead might be up in the mountains, which makes it almost impossible to get the supply over there. And it's like 14 movement points. So you may see range to rail 1, MP to rail 14. Okay. And we'll get to the ranges you need to be within in just a second. Then you see range to headquarters 2, MP to headquarters 2. Okay, this unit will always try to get supply from the headquarters first. It is more efficient. it gets more supply. And why is that? Well, the headquarters has support. It is set up to get supply and distribute supply. All right. And so it is more efficient at getting supply to its divisions, whereas the division is not really set up to do that. And so if it actually has to go to the railhead itself, it doesn't do as well. It does not get as much stuff. It's less efficient. So this unit is always going to try to pull off of its headquarters for supply, and the headquarters will do all of the logistics of that, assuming the headquarters is in supply. Okay, so let's back up for a second and look and see where its headquarters is. Well, its headquarters is right here. This is not very efficient because the headquarters really should, you should always try to keep your headquarters, if you can, on the rail line and repaired rail line. All right. So let's start from the ground floor here. Our railhead is now right here. How do we know that? Let's go to map information. Let's go to rail damage and see if it, oh, that's right. Let's click on here. Now let's go to rail damage. There we go. So again, you've always got to click in a vacant hex. This drove me crazy when I first started playing the game. I'm like, why won't it show me the? Heck, I'm still doing it. You have got to left click in a blank hex, or I guess you could do it. No, I don't think you can do it on a unit even. It's got to be a blank hex. Then it will show you railroad repair. This shows us what's been repaired. Now you may say, okay, I get it. This is the railhead. Not for this headquarters. It's actually either this one or this one. Even better yet, let's go set it on the rail. Now it's actually on a railhead. And if we look in supply, 0 movement points. So these headquarters have exactly the same information in some respects. They don't have how far it is to their headquarters. When I say these headquarters, core headquarters. Uh, it can be Army headquarters if you have divisions directly attached to them, but this is why you want to get everything commanded by a core headquarters if you can. You want to attach everything to core headquarters because they're going to be out there distributing the supply. Okay, so you'll say, what is the range to rail for this thing? It's in the same hex as a railhead, so it's 0. MP to rail, 0. Great. Well, let's move this headquarters back to where it was. Now let's look at it. And we'll go to supply details. Range to rail, 1 hex, MP to rail. So it's only 1 movement point to get to the rail. All right, because it's a clear hex, it can go down to that rail in 1 movement point. And of course, you could always see that by just saying, how many does it have left? 48. How many movement points does it take to get to the railhead? Well, it only takes 1. And so that's where this number comes from. Okay, so let's go back to the division now. I think we were looking at this one. We'll right click, supply details. Now it's saying that range to headquarters is 2 hexes, MP to headquarters is 2 hexes. Okay, is that true? 1, 2. Yep, it's 2 hexes away from its headquarters. It also has 15 movement points, and you can see its most efficient route. The game gives you that. It takes 2 movement points to get there for this unit. And so its range to headquarters is 2, MP to headquarters is 2. However, it's actually closer to a railhead. This is a railhead. It's green. It's a green rail hex. So what's happening here? Well, it's 1 hex away from the railhead and 2 movement points away from the railhead. Is that true? Let's see. It's got 15. Now it's saying it takes 1 here. Um, for some reason, it's telling us it's 2. I think that's because this just got repaired, and so it's considering this its actual railhead. Okay. Although it does say 1 hex, so that's very kind of interesting. Hmm. Well, they're adding an MP to the rail. I mean, the game's never wrong, right? I actually think that should be 1 and 1. I'll make a bug report. But the point stands that this will tell you how close the unit itself is to a railhead. Because if its headquarters is not in range or is not in supply, it will try to pull supply, the big general supply, from the railhead itself. Okay? But you can tell what it's doing because it tells you. What is its supply source? Well, a supply source can also be a city. It can draw off of a city. Cities produce supplies, fuel, and ammo that units can draw off of. And so if you find yourself isolated, not near rail, not near a headquarters, this unit could pull off of a city. That's not the case here. Its supply source is the one headquarters. And we'll go and look. What is this? Well, it's the one core headquarters, and that's where it's getting its supply. It will always tell you where it's coming from. Okay? Then it tells you how much it got as opposed to how much it uh, wanted to get. How much supply received? 7 of 9. Okay, so it wanted 9, it got 7. Fuel source was also the one core. The one core, it pulled 3 of 3 off the one core. Great. All right. Now this supply is a little different. It actually adds some things. For our purposes here, it's not that important. Wanted, received. So here it's saying it wanted 10. Um, and it received 7, and that's where you get the 71%. Fuel, it wanted 3, it got 3, we already saw that. Vehicles that it has, 57, 57, okay, great. And it shows you how much consumption in general it has. Then it shows you all the modifiers that went into this happening. But for your purposes, you can get more deep into all of that if you want, or you can think of these very basic general rules when it comes to supply. And that is you want these core headquarters or an army headquarters if it has units directly attached to it, although you want to avoid that because they are not as efficient at distributing supplies. The general rule is you want these headquarters as close to your main rail line or at least repaired rail as you can get them. As a matter of fact, you almost always want them, if you can, sitting on the rail line. Now, they're going to get ahead of this rail unit, and so these units may be up here and the rail unit may only be here. That's fine. You're going to still want to keep it as close as you can within reason. You still have to have your divisions moving as fast as possible, but you may want to have your headquarters, you know, hanging back, but no further than 5 hexes away from your divisions. So let's back up here again. This core headquarters, to get supply from a railhead, must be within 25 hexes or no, not or, and 100 movement points away from the railhead. So let's say this is the railhead, and let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll just kind of guesstimate. But that headquarters unit could be up in here, all right? 25 hexes away as long as it's within 100 movement points of that railhead. So your core headquarters will get way out here, especially the Panzer ones. Um, but when I say that, so they're going to get way out there, 25 and 100, but the but is for every hex and movement point it is away from the railhead, it gets less efficient, and it's on a sliding scale. So if it's 1 hex away, it maybe only gets 99% of the supply it requested. Okay, if it's 10 hexes away, it maybe only gets 80%. And they changed this with version or patch 1.12. They changed this where it is on a sliding scale. It kind of used to be an all or nothing thing, whether you were within a certain range. But as it is now, every hex and every movement point that you're away from the railhead reduces the efficiency down. Okay? So, what does that mean? Well, the railhead right now is actually not there. I think the game is considering it right here and right here for calculations, but basically it's right here. Here's the railhead. So let's say that this headquarters has advanced to here. All right, great. And let's say the divisions underneath this core headquarters are in, up here. Now, those divisions may draw off of Riga if we've captured Riga and there's anything there, but most likely there might not be. So, what is the rule with the division? Well, the division has to be within 5 and 25. 5 hexes, or no, not or, and 5 hexes and 25 movement points of its core headquarters to get supply from the core headquarters. And if it's not that close, then it tries to get it itself by the 25 and 100 rule. Okay, so let's draw this out. Um, let's talk about divisions over here. Divisions need to be divisions, regiments, whatever the uh, idea, around a division is. It can be broken down or not. And also the support units within a division now get supply independently, but of course they're always going to be in divisions. So the same ideas persist, or they're going to be at headquarters where it's not an issue. But divisions need to be within 5 hexes or 25 movement points of their core headquarters to get supply. If they're not, they will try to get supply themselves off of the railhead, and they would need to be within 25 hexes, or if I can draw it, let's see, zeros are hard, or 100 movement points of the railhead. And this is also on the sliding scale. So for every hex, every movement point they're away from that railhead, they will get less supply. It will be less efficient. For the core headquarters, the one thing you really need to remember is the 25 by 100 rule. 25 hexes or 100 movement points to get supply from the railhead. Now, this means your panzers, you may actually have to slow them down at some point as we go through for Army Group Center. Hopefully, you won't have to do that, but hopefully, they'll also be just at the edge of this range because you want to get out there as fast as you can. But for those core headquarters to get supply from the railhead, from the permanent supply sources back in Germany or back in Romania, they need 25 to be within 25 hexes and, it's a plus 100 MP. If they're within 2 hexes and 102 MP, I guess that's some really high mountains. That would not work. All right. And so you got to kind of pay attention to the terrain, but it's these two rules that you need to keep in mind. So in practicality, how does this work? Well, the way this works, and I'll keep the pencil going for a second, is let's say the railhead is here. All right. Let's say our divisions are, out here. So we have divisions here and here and here. And we would want our core headquarters to be within 5 of these, 5 hexes, and 25 movement points within each of these. Okay, so we may put it, let's say right here. Is that close enough? 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, that's not close enough. So we may have to put it, let's say here. Is that close enough? Nope. You're going to have to really think about where these core headquarters are to get within 5. I think this one's right. It gets within 5 of every division. Then you're going to have to figure out, though, is this heavy forest or is there a clear path to get to, you know, this hex that's within 25 MP? Now, luckily, the game will do that for you. You can go right click on the division and you can see exactly how many hexes away it is from its headquarters in both hexes, or and movement points. All right, so it will tell you exactly. So getting off this for a second, we look at this. It always tells you in supply details. This is the headquarters, but if we go to a division, so let's just pick a different one for fun. If you look at this, it will always tell you, first of all, you can just quickly look here. It'll say whether it's in supply or out of supply. Out of supply meaning it's not within range of getting supply. Here it is. It says it's 3 MP away from wherever it is getting supply. When you look here, it's getting it from its headquarters. All right, we can see that. We can also see its range to rail and hexes itself, and MP to rail itself is 3, range to headquarters 2, MP to headquarters 3. It tells you all of that right here. So again, traditionally, you're trying to move this specialized rail unit as fast as you can. I mean, I usually move these if, if the army has already moved well beyond it. I usually move these first each turn just to make sure I move them. You don't ever want to have a turn where you forget and you're like, oh shoot, I did not advance my rail. Because getting this rail as close to Leningrad, but really especially as close to Moscow as you can, as fast as you can, is of the utmost importance, because you need you need all of these units as close to a railhead as you can get them. Okay, so now let's go back to the little example I was making here. I'll just draw some more things out here. We've got divisions, one here, one here, let's say one here. We've got our core headquarters here. All right. Let's say the railhead has made it to here. All right. This is pretty realistic. It could have made it to here. That's fine. This headquarters is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 hexes away. Most of this is clear, so it's easily going to be within 100 movement points. Let's just make up a number and say it's 60 movement points. Okay, so we'll go on the sliding scale and they'll give us, let's say, 70% of our supply to this core. But above and beyond that, because we are this far away from the railhead, it's going to start using up this vehicle pool. Because this vehicle pool you need trucks, right? This is as far as the rail goes. The trucks are going to pick it up here and take them up to these headquarters, and that starts to eat into your vehicle pool, and that's where that comes into effect. And then the vehicles in the units, if they're not enough to get all of the supply they need, then the vehicle pool also has to help here. Now, that won't be as big of a factor. The biggest factor in your vehicle pool and how much you're using, you can see we're already using 11,000 out of our 37,000 allotment. I mean, whoops, no, sorry, sorry. You can see that we're already using let me just make sure that that is still recording. I just wanted to make sure. Um, we've already used 11,000 out of our 37,000 allotment. When we come down here, I mean, we're only this far in, right? So you've got to really think about how those trucks are being used. And as much as you may want to just fly forward, that has got to be a consideration, how much of your vehicle pool you're using. And the further that they have to go, so in our example there, 14 hexes, the more attrition they have. And attrition will start to eat into your vehicle pool. Now, as you bring the railhead closer and closer and closer, you're going to hopefully use less and less trucks. But this will always tell you, based on where we are now, and it's not surprising because we got to run trucks up here and to this other headquarters, you will start eating into this number. Now, the last thing I want to cover with that before we talk about the Soviet winter, which has some special rules about that, is if you do find yourself in a place where you are out of range of your core headquarters, again, those divisions can draw, let's say the railheads here, the divisions here, but your core headquarters, for whatever reason, isn't within 5 and 25 of the division, it will go to that railhead and you'll have to really pay a big truck cost for that transportation. So you really want to avoid that as much as possible. If I had one overall tip for this game, it is keep all of your divisions within 5 hexes and 25 movement points of their core headquarters. All right. Now there is more to supply, but really, we've covered the high points as much as I think we should really cover in a basic tutorial. You can always look here, see what you're requesting, see what you're actually receiving, see where you're actually getting supply from, and you can also see the ranges here, which are all important. Range to headquarter, MP to headquarters, the two most important numbers, 5 and 25, is what you have to keep those in for a division. One last thing I wanted to mention here that I hadn't brought up before. Strangely enough, uh, on this screen, on this card, this shows you the percent chance your leader, the leader of your core headquarters, has of passing his various roles. So if you ever want to know, the leader checks that we've talked about in the leader, I think that was like maybe episode number 5. If you ever want to know the chances that this unit, based on the leaders that are above it, will pass these checks, you can see it right here. All right. So obviously we have some good admins above us, and mechanized you would expect wouldn't be as good. This is an infantry division. So 77%, 82, 73, 70. You can always come and look and say, hey, what's the chances we're passing all of these checks the game makes? I just thought I would point that out because it's kind of randomly on in your supply details. It does have an effect on supply. Your leaders will be making rolls to make sure that they're distributing the supply. As you might imagine, that's the number one priority or the number one task of your core headquarters. So they better be passing their roles. It's another reason you want to have good leaders. Now, before we wrap this episode up, I just wanted to go over very quickly the Soviet winter because it is modeled in this game and it is where a lot of people, for lack of a better term, meet their Waterloo because they don't know how to handle it once the Soviet winter hits. Okay. And so there are very, very special rules that go around the Soviet winter. And what am I talking about? Well, you could look in the manual if you wanted to, but you probably don't want to because that's why you're listening to this tutorial. There is a or there is a grid that shows you the 1 to 20 dice rolls that determine the weather. Now, something we haven't talked a whole lot about, but is very important, obviously, is the weather. All right. And for every month of every year of the war that the game models, so from 41 all the way into 45, every month the game will be making a die roll that is 1 to 20 to determine the weather. Okay? It just so happened that the winter of 1941-42 was the worst winter anyone could ever remember in the Soviet Union, at least back until 1812, which just so happened to be the year. Now, nobody probably remembered that was alive in 1941, but 1812 just so happened to be when Napoleon invaded the Soviet Union, and of course, the Axis, the Germans, ran into many of the same problems that Napoleon did. But anyway, the game makes a dice roll 1 to 20 to determine the weather. In December of 41, there's actually about an 80% chance that you're going to have snow, but it's not going to be terrible. All right. October, November, you have chances of mud, very high chances. And once mud hits in this game, you can't move. All right. So once you get into about turn 17 or 18, you will very likely, as you learn the game, be on the gates of Moscow. You will at least be beyond Smolensk. I will admit the first time I played this game, I only probably got to about here, Rezev Vyazma line. There have been times, even after I got what I consider very good at this game, that I got stopped like right in this area to get out and encircle Moscow in 18 turns. I mean, we can go all the way back west here is incredibly difficult when you're also trying to envelop all of these Soviet troops. It's just very hard to do. And so when you get to around turn 17 or 18, most likely the game is going to turn, or I say the game, the terrain is going to turn to mud. When it turns to mud, you really can't move. At that point, your offensive operations are essentially over for 1941. Hopefully, you've gotten out and around Moscow a little bit, but most likely the first 5, 10 times even you play this, you will be right in this area, okay? And in the north, if we go up to the north, you maybe will take Leningrad, but most likely the first 5 or 10 times you play, you'll be right here. Okay, once you've figured out the game. Now, the first couple of times, you may not, you may be back here struggling to take Peskov, but once you know the game, you're probably going to be in this area and fighting off a mass of Soviet troops trying to get over the Volkhov River here. And when you do and that mud hits, you can't move. All right. Then what happens? Well, in December, as I said, you probably get some snow. So October, November, mud. You can't move now. You can't do offensive operations, but you still have a far superior army out here. You probably might get attacked, but you're going to be able to fend that off very easily. December, you probably get snow. In January, there is a 95% chance you're going to get blizzard conditions. And what happens when you get there? Well, for one thing, your supply modifier becomes 50%. All right. So you're only going to be getting about 50% of the supply that you normally get. And what this is modeling is the absolutely unprepared nature of the German, specifically the German army, really, the unprepared nature of the German army to fend off a terrible Soviet winter. All right. And so, first of all, if you're east of hex 72, all right, so this is hex 102. This is 84. So essentially, if you're east of Vitebsk, so anything east of Smolensk, of course, um, and Y95 if you're greater than Y95, which is way down here. So really the winter goes all the way down to, this is 58. Okay, Kharkov is 84. So as you can see, I mean, this is going down almost to Stalino, where this first winter rule hits. Um, you are going to have, and this happens during the blizzard turns. First of all, your attack modifier is divided by 3 in December, it's divided by 2 in January. So whatever your normal attack score is, it gets automatically divided by 3, 2, 1.5, 1.5 in March and April. And so all the way through April, essentially, they're cutting your attack value, your attack score by some penalty modifier. All right. That also happens in the snow, but if it's snow, it's always 1.5. All right. So if it's blizzard, it's 3 or 2 or 1.5, depending on the month. If it's only snow, it's only 1.5. as well, your defense modifier is also cut. So you may say, oh gosh, darn, I can just turtle up and play defense. Well, you can and you will because it's impossible to attack really with those kind of modifiers. But in December 41, your defense modifier is divided by 2. In January, it's 1.5. In February of 42, it's 1.33. And in March, it is actually goes back up to divided by 2. All right. And so both your attack and your defense are cut in half or 1.5 at least most of the time. All right. You suffer all kinds of damage and disruption. So in December 41, you will get 1 to 7% damage to both the division elements, all of the elements, and your support units. In January through March of 42, that can be anywhere between 5 and 20% of your elements will be damaged each month. Okay, and so that obviously can eat into what you've got. I mean, if 20, let's say it's the worst case scenario, 20% each month, you get to the end of March and all of a sudden 60, 65% of your elements now show as damaged. All right. And so these are very, very severe penalties. So what can we do about it? Well, there's really only two things you can do. If a unit has a fort level of 1, you get a 1% reduction in all that. But that is on a sliding scale. If you get up to fort level 5 in a hex, that could be as much as a 25% reduction in the penalties. Okay? And so, what does that tell you? Well, if units are out in the kind of open, all right, you want to you want to build up a fortification, and you also want them to sit still, because if they sit still they will naturally be building fort levels. All right, and so once you get to that mud phase, you want to start thinking, where is my line? All right, where is my line, my defensive line that we're now going to set up? Now this gets a little difficult here at Moscow because you really want to be sitting behind a river. And if you can, and I say if you can, hey, this is best case scenario. If you have units that are going to be out in the elements, try to do it down the river here. Try, if you have to fall back, try to do it here, because at least then the Soviets would have to attack you across the river. You may have to even fall back to the Dnieper. This, I think, historically is really what ended up happening. They had to fall back here. Now, how else can we blunt the effects? Well, we can blunt them in towns, all right, in light urban areas. Let's see, I think, is this, nope, Vyazma is actually a city. That's good. This is light urban. So let me make sure I get this right here. If you are in a town, so one of these little dots out here, if your unit beats a dice roll, then you can have the unit that has the most amount of troops not suffer any negative effects. You're like, wow, that's really powerful. And it is. So if you go to these dots, this is where you're going to want to have ground units that are exposed. And if you can, you want to have them there by themselves, because the idea is, right, that these German troops could have found shelter in these towns. Who knows what war atrocities they may have been committing in these towns, but the idea is they could probably find a warm bed to sleep in. And so if you can get one of your units, so a division here, a division here, one here, now this gets them very spread out in weird formations, but if you can get them there, then one unit can um, get us around those negative effects if the leadership beats a dice roll. All right. You may say, well, gosh, that seems a little random. It is uh, no doubt. Now, a city hex, all right, if you can get into a city like Vyasma, it is the two units that have the most manpower that escape the effects, and there is no dice roll. The thinking is here, if these troops get into Vyasma, they are going to be able to ward off, they can start fires, they can stay warm, they can work on their equipment, whatever the case may be. If they can get into a city, um, an, a heavy urban area, then it's up to two units that are automatic, no dice roll. Now, if they get into a light urban area, and I thought I found one a minute ago, didn't I go over something that was light urban? It is an automatic one unit, all right? So maybe Rezhev's light. Nope, it's a city, so that's good. So you can go to Rezhev, and two units can escape that. Now, in practicality, how does this work? How it works is, let's just say that you decide I need to fall back to the Dnieper. All right, you're going to want to build these. Whoops. You're going to want to build these fortified units here, first of all, to protect you in places that you don't have other units, because those fortified units you don't really care about, to be honest with you. All of your other units, you're going to want to find towns, cities, or heavy urban areas. So cities or light urban, any kind of urban area, a town, city, or otherwise, you're going to want to find that and get your troops into it, especially the panzers. And I cannot stress this enough, that you cannot go into winter, the winter of 41. And this also applies in the winter of 42, but its effects are much less. Okay, the winter of 41 was just exceptionally harsh. You are going to want to get your panzers into a city hex. So you can put two panzer divisions in here, two panzer divisions in here, two here. You have got to get them out of here before December of 41 starts. All right. And that is, I think, a pretty big and good overview of production, supply, and logistics. If you have any questions, or you think that you don't understand something, or maybe I didn't cover something you're interested in, or that you think about, just let me know in the comments. Always happy to answer those questions. But as always, thank you so much for joining me. I'm having a blast making this one. I think next time we're going to get into ground units and combat, and we may start thinking about playing a first turn that turns into a let's play. I may do that with the combat section, so I'll go along and it'll be part of the basic tutorial, but it'll also be the start of the let's play. So we have covered a lot of topics here. Hopefully you're enjoying it, and hopefully it is very helpful for playing this game. So until next time, thanks so much. Strategy Gaming Dojo. I'll talk to you.